As you discovered in the last session, coaching is about helping someone else achieve results. For a coach to be able to fulfill their role well, it's really important that they have a good understanding of how people do that. How do people take information that's coming into them and somehow turn it into achievements? What happens that means that sometimes people achieve outstanding results and sometimes they achieve results that are not what they wanted? How come even in exactly the same situations, one person will thrive, grow and succeed, and another person will do far less well? That's what we're going to investigate in this session. We're going to give an answer to the question, how do people achieve results? So, at the end of this session, you'll be able to describe the process by which we achieve results. You'll be able to explain the importance of our state or frame of mind in achievement, and identify the key factors in taking responsibility for your own learning. By understanding how people get results, that makes it much easier for you as a coach to respond in a way that enables them to achieve even more of those results that they want. What I'd like you to imagine in this next slide is that there's someone there and there is some sort of event going on outside of them. So that could be someone talking to them, could be something that's happening, just anything that's happening outside of that person. And what we're going to think about is what happens as that information comes into the person. And what difference does that make to their results? Apparently, in any one moment in time, we have about 2 million bits of information a second hitting us. So if you could imagine if you're sitting in a room right now, if you were able to take in all that information, you would remember every single little spot and mark and colour that there is in the carpet or on the floorings. You would remember where everything is on the table that's in front of you. You would remember where all the specks of dust are. You would remember every reflection in the window and so on. But our minds just cannot handle that amount of information. It's not capable of processing that amount. So what happens is we filter the information so it is in a manageable amount. And we hold a considerable amount of information in our unconscious minds. And then, as Miller discovered, we have about 7 ± 2 chunks of information available in our conscious minds at any one point in time. And that amount will depend on our state. So if it's very late on a Friday evening after a busy week at work, we may be processing just 5 chunks. Whereas if it's when we've woken up after a great night's sleep and are feeling full of the joys of spring, then it may be 9 chunks. I'm sure you can think of times when you process at your best and those when you don't. So we process information, and we do that in 3 different ways. We delete, we generalize, and we distort. The first way is deletions. Deleting is great because it means that we only try to remember information that's useful and a priority for us. It means that we can ignore the dust and just not notice it and get on with much more interesting things. Deletion can be not so helpful when you delete information that might be better if you hadn't, like the 2 hours it took me to remember where I'd put my car keys the other day. So deletion is where we filter for those things that we choose to pay attention to and which things we choose not to pay attention to. That's important, particularly in coaching, because you will want to discover what the person's paying attention to at that moment in time and what they're not. For example, someone may be complaining about how they never get acknowledged or praised for the work they do. And they're doing this because they're only paying attention to those times when people are criticizing them, and have unconsciously deleted all the times when people have said the good things. You get very different results when you are mainly paying attention to criticism than when you're mainly paying attention to praise. Finding out what someone is paying attention to and finding out what they are deleting in a situation will help you as a coach ask questions and help the client investigate how they can recover information that may be useful for them to remember and delete information that may be useful for them to delete. The next way in which we filter is generalizations. What happens when we generalize? Well, what we do is to take information that's coming into us and put it into categories with other similar things. And that's great for learning. Every time we come across a door, for example, we don't have to learn how to open it again. We've generalized how to open doors, and we only have to learn new things if it's a very unusual door construction. So with generalization, we create a model of how to do things or how to think about things, and then apply the generalization to all similar situations we come across. In generalizing, we'll take one or two experiences of something and then generalize them to apply to all things that are similar. So on a course I was running the other day, there was a lady who did a fantastic presentation, and one of the other delegates asked her how she managed it. And this lady said that the first time she'd ever been asked to do a presentation, she was only given 10 minutes notice, and it went very well. So she said to herself, if I can do one under these circumstances, then I'm always going to be all right doing them. She had made a generalization from one experience, and it was serving her very well. The other day I also heard a sales manager saying, I never take on anyone with a weak handshake. Anyone with a weak handshake is no good in sales. So he had made a generalization about handshakes. And whether that served him well or not, who knows? But we are making these generalizations all the time. And in coaching, as we'll discover in the section on language, listening out for generalizations helps you find out how someone is creating their particular perspective of things. The third way that we filter is through distortions. How distortion works is that you take in information and then you change it in some way or give it some meaning. Distortion is the basis of creativity. We take in information from one source and some more from another source and combine them and change them slightly to create something new. So the person or team from 3Ms who took in the information about some glue that they were working on that didn't stick too well, and the information of people wanting something to jot things down on, they made new meaning for it and came up with the idea for post-it notes. So we can use the process of distortion to create new things, new ideas, and new solutions. And we also use distortion to create problems for ourselves. So someone said to me last week, I'm 30 now, and that means I'm too old to be any good at languages. So this person had taken the information that they were 30 and created meaning from that they wouldn't be able to learn new languages. And of course, once we've made these meanings, we act on the basis of them. So you can imagine what will happen if that person's boss says, there's a wonderful new position for you in a different country, and you would need to learn their language in order to take up the position. Later on, when we start to study the impact of language, you'll find out just how much our distortion creates our frame of mind and hence our results. All the time we're filtering information in at least one of these three ways. And what is it that means that you will filter information in one way and I'll filter the same information in a different way? Well, it's to do with our values and beliefs, our memories and experiences, our attitudes, and the way that we process language and the decisions we've already made in our lives. Values are what are important to us. So if I were to ask you what is important to you about any job you take, and as you think about that, you'll come up with a list of things that are important to you. Things which you value about a job. It might be things like autonomy, variety, good pay, being treated with respect, and so on. Values are how we know whether something is right or wrong for us. Values are how we evaluate things and the things that motivate us. Beliefs are things that we hold to be true. They are the rules that we live our lives by. So one person may have a belief linked to the value of respect, that you must always say good morning to everyone you pass on the way to your desk in the morning. Whereas someone else around the same value of respect may have a belief that you shouldn't disturb people who are working unless it's something very important. So even around the same values, each one of us will have different sets of beliefs as to how that value works. Memories and experiences impact on us because we will delete, distort and generalize them to give us our values and beliefs. If we come across things now that are things that we have had good experience of in the past, we're likely to handle them in a different way from things that we come across that are associated with not such good experiences in the past. And our attitudes will impact on the way we filter. Someone with a can-do attitude will react very differently to a new request from someone with a job's worth attitude. And as we've already seen, the way that we language things will have an impact on our filtering process too. And finally, we'll filter things on the basis of decisions we've already made. Someone who made a decision early on that they were no good at maths will filter any situation where they have to do something mathematical on the basis of that decision. Whereas if they'd made a decision early on in their lives that they really loved maths, they will approach things in a very different way. So the information comes into us and we filter it by deleting, distorting or generalizing on the basis of our values, beliefs, experiences, attitudes, language and the decisions we've already made. And then what we do is to create our own internal representation of that information. So here is the important thing to recognize about this. The representation that we hold in our minds of an external event is never the same as the external event. It is our version of it after it's gone through our filtering process. What happened and our representation of what happened are never the same because of the filtering process. Added to this, several people could have been in exactly the same situation together with the same information, and they will each have different internal representations of the events because of the particular ways in which they filter. Each one will have their own model of the world. And that is why in coaching it's so important for the coach to work with their client's model of the world, because that is how the client perceives things, and it will not be the way the coach, the client's manager, or anyone else perceives things. Our model of the world is unique to us. The next question is, how do we hold and store those representations that we've created? Well, we hold them as pictures or images, sounds, feelings, tastes, and smells. So what I'd like you to do right now is just to sit back and close your eyes and just imagine that you are in your kitchen. And on the surface is a chopping board, and on the board is a lemon. And you can see the shape of the lemon and its beautiful yellow colour. You can see the little dimples in the skin. And I'd like you to pick up the lemon and feel the slight oiliness of the skin and feel the shape and hold it under your nose so you can smell the lemon. Now what I'd like you to do is to put the lemon back down on the board and take a knife and cut the lemon in half, and hear as the knife cuts down onto the board. And I'd like you to take one half of the lemon and see the juice as it escapes from the cut half. And then take that half and take a great big bite. Okay, so now open your eyes. Now, could you do that? And was it easier for you to do one bit of that rather than another? Or were you able to do it all easily? Because, the thing I have to tell you is that there was no lemon there. But our incredible minds are able to recreate the situation in pictures, sounds, smells, tastes and feelings. And maybe you even said things to yourselves as you was doing that. Maybe you were saying, "Oh, I wish I had a drink to put the lemon in." Or, "What on earth is all this about?" Because what we are doing, as well as storing the information through our senses, We will also attach self-talk, thoughts and meanings to our representation. We call that self-talk or auditory digital. That is about the words that we say to ourselves. So the information comes into us and we filter it and then create our own internal representation of that event. And that, along with our physiology, will create our state or frame of mind about the event. So the physiology is to do with how our body is. Our state is impacted by whether we are feeling fit and energetic or whether our body is tired and listless. And you can change your state by changing your internal representation of the situation and or by changing your body. Here's an experiment. What I'd like you to do right now is to stand up and make yourself be really, really tall. And look up and put the biggest grin you can possibly imagine on your face. And whilst you're standing like that, with that big grin on your face, I'd like you to try and be depressed. You see, you just can't do it, can you? Because one of the quickest ways of changing our state is to change our body. So our physiology is another way in which we create our state or our frame of mind. So our internal representations and our physiology are the two things that create our state. And it is our state that drives our behavior and what we do and the course of action that we take, and that directly impacts on our results. This is important to realize if you are coaching someone. In order for them to get different results, they will have to do different things, and that will be driven from their state of mind. So a lot of the work that we do as coaches is geared towards helping the person find a more appropriate state for the results that they want to achieve. For example, it's unlikely that someone who is unhappy, frightened and demotivated is going to achieve the same results as someone who is the opposite. Our results then are largely driven by our state, and that is driven by how we filter, how we represent what is happening internally, and how we are looking after our body. So someone could have a very angry customer marching towards them. That's the external event. And the information comes into them and they will filter it in their particular way, and the internal representation that they create from that might be about, oh no, not another complaining customer. I hate this job. I just want to get out of here. That will create a certain state inside them. And as you think of that, what sort of behavior are they likely to display? And what is the result likely to be? On the other hand, exactly the same person in exactly the same situation, that's the very angry customer marching towards them, could filter it in their way, and the internal representation that they create may be of someone who is having a really bad day and needs some help. The behavior and the results that come from that state are going to be very different from the previous one. It's not the external event that shapes our results, it's what we do with it when we take in the information. If we change our state, we will change our behavior and change our results. It's interesting to think about what state of mind we're in when we do our best work and what state of mind we are in when we're doing our least best work. So we have a choice then, and that is to live our lives blaming everything outside of ourselves for the results that we get, or taking responsibility for our part in the process and how we have filtered and represented a situation. When we blame everything else and make excuses, we make ourselves powerless, because for things to change, then someone else has to change what they're doing. We say to ourselves, unless he or she stops doing whatever it is they're doing, unless he or she stops treating me in this particular way, or unless he or she stops talking to me in this particular way, or whatever it is, then I can't move forward, or I can't be happy, or I can't achieve the results I want. In effect, we're handing over our happiness to someone else. It's like we're putting our happiness on a plate and we're giving it to someone else, and we're saying, until you stop doing that, then I can't be happy. And the problem with that is that the only person that we can change is ourselves. We can't force other people to change. And so we become powerless. On the other hand, when we take responsibility and change what we need to change about how we're approaching a situation, that is much more empowering, because the one person that we can change is ourselves. And the great thing is that when we do that, we learn from it. And the beauty of this is that we are part of a system. And as you'll already know if you've studied systems thinking, as soon as one part of a system changes, the rest of the system has to change too. Changing one thing changes the rest. It's like when you have a team member leave and a new one joins. There's always change, because the new person is going to do things differently, and that affects the rest of the system. So when we change, everything else is going to change some way as well. And our job as a coach is to help our client take responsibility and ownership for their goals and situations, and to take action to move towards these goals. This is an important frame of mind in coaching. It's one that will have the greatest impact on your client, the one that will empower them, and the one that will drive the type of questions and actions that you do to help them. Because the questions that you ask will be geared towards helping them take responsibility and take action for what's happening, so that they can achieve their goals. So we have a choice: blame and excuses, or ownership and responsibility. Which one do you choose? To summarize what we've been talking about in this session, we've been looking at how it is that we achieve the results that we achieve, and thinking about how much is that a result of things that go on outside of ourselves, and how much of that is the result of how we process the information coming into us. And we looked at how we filtered the information, how we deleted, distorted and generalized it, and then how we created an internal representation of what's happening on the outside, what's happening in front of us. And it is from that internal representation and from how our body feels that we get our particular state or frame of mind. And it's that that drives our behavior and our actions, and that therefore it's that that has a direct impact on our results. So if we change our state, we will change our results. If we change the way that we filter things, we'll change our results. If we change the way that we represent events inside ourselves, we will change our results. And thinking in that way gives us an enormous amount of power. And that's really what coaching is all about. It's about helping people to change the way that they perceive things so that they're going to get even more of what they want.